Hi, everybody, and welcome to our Cleveland Guardians weekly report. No analytics here. We would have had a show today to wrap up the regular season if it had gone like it was going for the first half of the season. We would have been here to probably say a bunch of stupid things, like I did on July 7th, when the team had just lost their 10th straight to the Tigers, and they were 15 and a half games back. But we fast forward to today, September 29th. And wow, I wasn't the only one, but wow, was I off. Did I have this team figured wrong or what? The second half of the season was amazing. When we sat here on July 7th, this team was 40 and 48. They were looking terrible. I had said that I thought it was the worst Guardians team since 1991. Well, I was a little bit off. I was absolutely off. What we found out was this team was, I would have to say, I can't even deny it at this point, but this team is a team of destiny. At least to win the division. Because you can't sit here and tell me that this team, was great from the beginning, because they weren't. There were so many things about this team that just didn't seem right. And there's still things right now that don't seem like they're, that could be big pitfalls heading into the postseason here. But I, along with many others, had absolutely given up. I did on July 7th. And I'm not a person who gives up on in my time, watching this team since I was 8 years old in 1975. I'm not a person who gives up on this organization. And but it did really remind me, the first half of the season did really remind me of the teams of the 70s and 80s. Like, it was watching it every day was not the most fun. I love baseball, so I watched, and so I listened. But it was ugly. A lot of days it was ugly in the first half of the season. First 88 games. They were 40 and 48 when the final out was made on July 6th. 40 and 48. 15 and a half games out of first place. 15 and a half games behind the Tigers, led by A.J. Hinch. I didn't like A.J. Hinch in Houston, and I still don't like him. Doesn't matter who he manages. I don't think I'd like him if he managed the Guardians. I just don't like the guy. He's arrogant. And I think that's what the Tigers, they were arrogant. On July 6th, they had it. They won the division. They're 15 and a half up. Guardians had fallen to fourth place. Well, look what happened. The next 74 games, the Guardians went 48-26. And end up winning the Central Division. They were going to win the Central Division anyway because the Tigers lost yesterday and the Guardians held the tiebreaker. You know, the Tigers, who I think all season they thought they were better. But the Guardians won the season series. How does the other team win the season series and you think you're better? Obviously, they weren't. But the Guardians didn't want to win the division because they had the tiebreaker. They found out, word got to the dugout yesterday in the 8th inning. They were losing at that point. Then they were down 8-4, 8-5. And it looked like, oh, this is terrible. Then they got a run in the bottom of the 10th after, Texas was up 8-5. So it looked like this is over. There's no way. They got a run. They got it to 8-6. Then with two guys on base, Brian Rocchio, who most of the fan base and pretty much every podcaster, I never did though, I will say this, I never did. Every podcaster out there wanted them to cut ties with Brian Rocchio in the first half of the season. Brian Rocchio, since he's come back from Columbus, has been absolutely amazing. He's adjusted to playing second base now, and he's hit really well. And what does he do? Comes up in the 10th inning with two guys on base. The Guardians are down 8-6. There's 2 outs. And he hits a walk-off home run that hits the foul pole. And the Guardians win 9-8. And they win the division outright. They didn't need the tiebreaker. They win the division outright. And secure the 3rd spot in the playoffs. I mean, they had already secured the 3rd spot in the playoffs, but the walk-off win yesterday was basically icing on the cake for what this team had done. They're still hot going into the postseason. 19-4 in their last 23 games. Like I said, 48-26 since July 7th, but still 7-3 in their last 10. So if you can have a .667 winning percentage in the playoffs in each series, you're moving on. So if they could just keep winning at this pace, they'll continue to move on. They will, Detroit is not going to lay down in the wild card series. They're going to really want to win it after what happened, after blowing the division lead. They blew the lead just like as much as the Guardians, played incredible. 22 games over 500 since July 6th. Well, it's July 7th to come back and win the division. It is if you haven't heard yet, which I'm sure you have, it is the greatest comeback to win a division/league, AL or NL, American Association, any of those leagues, in 158 years. That's crazy. The closest team was the 1914 Boston Braves, the Miracle Braves. They won. They were 15 games back on July 4th, 1914. No, I was not alive. I do not remember that. But they ended up winning the American League pennant, the National League pennant, sorry. And I got my Bostons mixed up there. They ended up winning the National League pennant and then sweeping the Philadelphia Athletics in the World Series 4-0. So I don't think that path is going to be as easy for the Guardians. Am I saying they can't win the World Series? No way. I think they can. Why not? Why not? Why not? We'll talk at a little later what concerns me. But why not? They didn't look like they could do anything this season. After July 6th, on July 6th, it was terrible. It was, it was not a good day to be a Cleveland Guardians fan. And then it got bad again when, I can't remember the exact date. I know they played Colorado the day that Emmanuel Clase was put on the restricted list and basically banned for life from baseball. I mean, he hasn't been banned for life yet, but everything points to that he's going to be. And then they lost to Colorado that night. And Tyler Freeman, former Guardian who was traded away in spring training, that I still am going to say is a bad move, that it was a bad move. Nolan Jones had a terrible year. Tyler Freeman had a great year for the Rockies. So, but, that was another day. It was a really, really low point. And it was another day where I thought, I felt it was just nothing positive was going to happen the rest of the season. It was going to be over. They were going to play the remainder of the 162, and then that was it. We were going to watch other teams in the playoffs. But, well, Stephen Vogt pulled a Lee Corso and said, "Not so fast, my friends." And it all turned around. And they won the division. So the last homestand drew over 190,000 people to Progressive Field. I have to say, what a great job the fan base did. I have been very critical of the fan base through the years for not supporting this team like they should and supporting another team in Cleveland that doesn't deserve it, the Browns. But the fans showed up. They showed up this past week, with the, against Detroit. The first three, that was pivotal. It was awful seeing David Fry get injured like he did. But he will recover. He was at the celebration yesterday. And he had the flag for a moment, the American League Central Division flag. That was great to see him there. Nolan Jones, I saw, was there also. He's been injured. And, look, I've been really hard on Nolan Jones, but he's part of this. He's part of what happened this year. And he was right until, like a couple of weeks ago, last week, where he, he got injured, the oblique, and now he's out for the year. But, as they say, the team says everybody matters, and, so Nolan Jones mattered in this whole thing. They all mattered. John Kenzie Noel came back up, hit a home run yesterday. I think he's hit 6 this year. Petey Halpin came into base run. He hasn't really done a lot, but he did get a hit, though, I believe, right, in his debut. So, but his base running skills need to improve. They weren't really good at Lake County when I covered him there, and they're still not that good. I've seen him make 2 base running mistakes. But it is speed on the base paths, which they may need in the playoffs. I just saw earlier that Dom Nunez and Chase DeLauder have been added to the team's practice squad, which I guess you have for postseason. You keep them there. They're with the team. And they could be added to the roster at any time if there's an injury. So that's, Chase DeLauder. How about that? How about if Chase DeLauder were to make his major league debut in the postseason? Somebody did that a couple years ago. I can't remember who it was. And he played really well. But so Chase DeLauder is around now, and Dom Nunez. So that's good. I mean, hey, we've been waiting a long time for Chase DeLauder. If he can make an impact in the playoffs, that'd be pretty good, wouldn't it? So we have last week against Detroit, 2-1. They outscored them 12-7 for a +5. They had the plus minus down to 1 at one point. It finished -6. They're the only team ever to have a plus minus and make the playoffs too. So whatever you think of that, that worries me. I'm not going to lie. But being 15 and a half games out on July 7th worried me also. Being 11 games out in September worried me also. Being 8 games out of a wild card spot at one point, that worried me also. But they overcame absolutely all of that. And so, then they had the Texas series on the weekend. Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And let me tell you something. That Texas team is good. They're going to be back next year to being a contender in the AL West. They had a lot of injuries this year. They had some pitching injuries. They've got some good young pitchers. That kid that pitched yesterday out of the bullpen, he reminded me of Emmanuel Clase. Throwing 100 every pitch. But if they're healthy, they're a contender next year again. And they showed it. They outscored the Guardians 17-15 in the series. The Guardians took 2 of 3, but got outscored. So that tells you Texas can still hit the ball, even though they had, it was crazy. How about Cody Freeman, huh? Coming in here and torturing them on Friday night and Saturday. The brother of Tyler Freeman. The front office probably doesn't really want to see any more Freemans for a while. I would think they don't. It didn't go well for them in regards to Freemans. But let's go over Detroit a little bit. What they ended up, they were 4 47. They were 47-30 after they swept the Guardians and ended up in were in first place and the Guardians were in fourth. They were 47-32. And what we have now is they went 30-41 since then. And that is not good. Their pitching wasn't as good the second half. Their bats were not as, productive as they were the first half. And it showed in their record, 30-41. And I'm sure they thought they had the division. They could coast the rest of the way. And, they found out they couldn't. And, and AJ Hinch, I don't know. I mean, I did see a Tigers fan Saturday, and we talked for a couple minutes, and he feels like AJ Hinch doesn't deserve to lose his job, but if you blow the division like they did, you almost have to fire him. So we'll see what happens. If they were to get by the Guardians in the first round, then obviously you don't fire him because you recovered. So, but they collapsed. The Guardians got hot. They collapsed, and it was the biggest collapse in Major League Baseball history. The biggest. There's never been one bigger. It's the biggest collapse ever. And now, Guardians fans will always have that. And the Tigers fans are going to have to live with that. That the Guardians humiliated them basically by winning the division after they were 15 and a half out. And that's just it. There's nothing else. It's fact now. It's fact. It's not speculation. It could happen. It's fact. It happened. The Guardians won the division after being down 15 and a half games on July 6th. They didn't, I don't know. As I said last week, what happened on that plane going to Houston? And how they turned it around. They had a great road trip, that road trip. What did they win? I think they went, wasn't that a 10-game road trip? And they went either 9-1 or 8-2. Like, it was like, what is happening? How is this happening? And they did it. And I don't know. There were so many things this year that go against conventional thinking, that they did. And, I think about it too. I think about how a lot of us were critical of Stephen Vogt and the things he would say in post-game press conferences. Like, what is he even saying? Like, this guy, oh my gosh, what's coming out of his mouth makes no sense. Well, what it ended up doing is making a lot of sense, that he never gave up on his guys. They worked hard every day, and they ended up winning the American League Central. The playoffs start tomorrow, 1:08 p.m. at Progressive Field. I was down that way today. Cavaliers Media Day was today, and had an enjoyable couple hours there. That organization is so well run. The Guardians and Cavaliers, they are the two. They're model organizations, and so it was nice to begin the Cavs journey today with Media Day. So I got it. And one last thing as far as Media Day with the Cavs, If Jared Allen isn't the nicest human being I've ever talked to or met in my life, then I don't know who is. Like, that man is just, he's just such a great person. Like, he treats everybody nice. You know, he's just such a nice guy. And, you know, it was just great to see him today. And hear him answer the media questions and laugh. And, you know, he got married in the off season. So that was really cool too. To hear him say his wife, you know, and the other guys too. There's not a guy on that team where I'm like, oh, this guy. No, it's just like the Guardians organization. They're great organizations. But we got baseball tomorrow, Tuesday, 108. Gavin Williams and Tariq Skubal, the rematch of last week. It worries me. I won't deny it. It worries me. Skubal is too good of a pitcher to struggle against a team 3 times. You know, well, he didn't really struggle 2 times ago, but he didn't get the win. And then this time, this last time, he did struggle. But that worries me because he's a good pitcher, and good pitchers don't struggle for long periods of time. But Gavin Williams, you know, he's pitched very well. He's become what we thought he could become. I remember seeing him at Lake County thinking this guy's really going to be something, you know. And he's another one. You know, he's a good guy. He's a nice guy. He just wants to play baseball. And, you know, and he's doing a good job for the Guardians. But those are the starters for tomorrow. They haven't said anything about who's starting on Wednesday or Thursday. Either team has said anything about those 2 days. But looking back at last year, so they only finished with 4 less wins than last season. How crazy is that? Right? How crazy is that? We would have never thought that in July. No way. I said they wouldn't win 70 games in July. I just didn't see it happening. So, but the thing that gets me, that worries me going into this series, that it could be over quick, is the run differential. Last year, you know, they've never, you know, people have liked to complain about the offense for quite a while now. But last year, they were a juggernaut compared to this year's team, run scoring wise, where they had a plus 87. This year, they had a minus 6. But the difference this year is the pitching is better. The starting rotation is better. So that helps. But the minus run differential still worries me. But you know what? Look at July 6th. There was no hope. Okay. So I'm going to finish it with my prediction for the series. And I don't want to jinx them, but I got to go with what I think. It's not going to be easy. The series will not be easy. It's going to come down to the, you know, who can hit the better pitchers, you know. So I am going to go with the Guardians in 3 games. It's going to be 2-1. The Guardians will win the series, and that's it. That's what I think. So hopefully next week we're not talking about the past. Hopefully we're talking about the future of this year. And you know, until next week, I hope everybody has a good week. And, you know, go Guardians.